try to establish friendship with devotees you trust, good devotees who understand and support you, and then discuss with your friends, discuss with people you trust, and come up with a plan. Always, of course, in cooperation with other ISKCON projects. Come up with a plan, some way that you could make an outstanding contribution to this movement.
It's time to get inspired. Join us as we celebrate devotee success stories. Preaching, business, community development, leadership and personal growth, all from the point of view of Krishna consciousness. Our goal? To help you to make your life successful. Hare Krishna, welcome to episode 25 of Successful Vaishnavas. Today we are interviewing His Holiness Hridayananda Maharaj, talking about preaching in the West and Krishna West, and taking initiative to spread Prabhupada's movement. I tried to get beyond the should we wear a dhoti or not kind of argument and get deeper behind, what's the real motivation behind this Krishna West project, and what can we take from it, and how can we get inspired to become better preachers as a result. So it's been a fun time. His Holiness Hridayananda Maharaj has been in Auckland for about a week, and he's just left. And a lot of food for thought. Some interesting discussions going backwards and forwards. And I'm sure you'll find this interview to be very inspiring. It follows on nicely from last episode, which was with Pancharatna Prabhu, talking about how we need to preach online. This is a way that we can reach people in the West. And so it's a natural follow-on for Hridayananda Maharaj to talk about some things that we might want to keep in mind when it comes to preaching to Western people and attracting them to Krishna consciousness. On the topic of preaching in the West and preaching online, I'm going to be holding a webinar shortly which will be exploring how devotees can use their talents to create a business which actually supports them financially and also helps people practically in their life and helps them to become Krishna conscious. So I hope that idea sounds exciting. The webinar will be coming out very soon. And if you want to find out about the webinar, just go to successfulvaishnavas.com, and then you'll see on the homepage there's 4 buttons. Choose whichever button matches your interest, and then join the email list so that I can inform you when the webinar will be coming. And you can have a listen and see what you think about this idea of using the internet to make money, to sustain ourselves, while at the same time spreading Krishna consciousness. So, with that said, let's get into the interview with Hridayananda Maharaj and see what he has to say about how we can revive the spirit of preaching in the Western countries. Hare Krishna. So Hare Krishna, I'm here with His Holiness Hridayananda Maharaj, the world famous leader of Krishna West. If you don't know what Krishna West is, you'll get to find out shortly. And today I'd just like to ask Maharaj a few questions. First of all, could you just explain a little bit about, you have this project Krishna West, it's what you're famous for these days. What inspired you? Yeah, maybe infamous, maybe that's right. What inspired you to start that project, and when did that?
Well, they say if it's not broken, don't fix it. But if it is broken, you have to fix it. And so when I was here, Prabhupada, back in the late 60s, early 70s, roughly Prabhupada was here with us from 1966 till 1976. And he built up, with the help of his young students, a very powerful Bhakti Yoga movement that spread all around the world and attracted so many people, tens of thousands of young people around the world. And there was a prospect, there was a real vision of trying to help re-spiritualize the world, bring in another, really solve a lot of the world's problems and like a spiritual awakening. And of course, Prabhupada left, and what social science and history tell us is that when a powerful leader departs this world, of course, then the real fun starts. You have to try to somehow, I won't go into all the sociological jargon, but basically you have to take that spiritual power of the leader and somehow channel it into a sustainable institutional structure so that things can go on and that message can be distributed and the world can be helped. So we had growing pains. I mean, there were many very sincere, very talented devotees that did service in many ways, and there still are many talented and sincere devotees. But somehow or other, when all the dust clears, the world has moved on, and we're kind of didn't move on. And because Prabhupada used to confide in me, and as far as I know, I'm the last active teacher in ISKCON that was personally trained by Prabhupada at the GVC level. And he used to often confide in me, and I mean, it was clear what his vision was. He really wanted to transform this world, help to re-spiritualize this world. And so I can't give up that vision. And so I see as my sacred duty to do just the best I can to help to revive what once was a powerful Western Hare Krishna movement. And as Krishna teaches us in Bhagavad Gita, we can't be attached to the results. I don't necessarily feel qualified or able to do all that, but I feel like I have to try. You have to do your best. It's like if you're playing games, you're on a team, and you may not be winning, but you have to try your best. Until the game's over, you got to try your best. So that's what I've been trying to do. And I, by studying the history of religion, social science, and all that stuff, and by, being an ISKCON watcher for almost half a century, and having been a so-called big leader in ISKCON for, forever, I did my best to come up with a rational analysis of what the problem was. Of course, the world has changed also. People aren't beating the doors down of religious or spiritual institutions to join nowadays. It's a very dull world. Basically, people's brains are melting on social media. But still, we have to do our best. So, again, I don't want, a lot of this may sound like self-flattery or just vanity, but I think it's more a sense of responsibility I felt being, in a sense, the only member of ISKCON that has for a very long time held the highest leadership positions in ISKCON, at the same time gone to the best schools and, got the highest degrees and blah, 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 in terms of studying actually what all, the history of religions. And so I felt that somehow Krishna, God, put me through all this so that I could serve in some way, not just so I could, try to show off something. So I've done my best. At least I have that satisfaction that I've really done my best to analyze. I believe the basic problem in terms of what we can do, of course, no matter what we do, if we live in an incredibly materialistic age, which we do, all we can do is our best. But I understand that if you study the history of religions, in a sense, ISKCON is trying to do something which no religion has ever done and perhaps never will. I think it's basically against the laws of nature. And that is trying to not merely give a spiritual message and a spiritual practice, but sort of, in an ethnic sense, culturally colonize other countries. And if you look at history, culture, as I always say, is like water. It flows down, not up. So at the present time, whether it's unfair or whatever it may be, or inaccurate, the fact is the Western world has most prestige now in terms of what is called soft power. Hard power in means in terms of academic lingo. Soft power Hard power means like, guns, tanks, bombers, and stuff like that. It's hard power, military power. Soft power is cultural power, like the Beatles were huge soft power. And, everyone was interested in going to England because of the Beatles or the Rolling Stones, or Hollywood is soft power, and so on. And, or, the Middle Earth being in New Zealand, it's kind of soft power for tourism here. So, in terms of, and we can measure these things. We can measure, for example, how many international tourists go to different countries. We can measure how many cultural trends in different countries are imitated, followed in other places. You can interview people and find out how many people admire this or that other country. And the simple fact is that India right now is pretty much near the bottom. Sometimes we like to tell ourselves that no, everyone, loves India or something, but actually, if they do, they don't love it enough to buy a plane ticket and go there, because in Asian countries, India is pretty much in last place in international tourism. And I've explained all these things a million times, but so the attempt to culturally colonize first world countries like New Zealand, America, Australia, Canada, England, Germany, France, and so on, the idea that we can culturally colonize first world countries with a third world culture is nothing less than delusional. It is like seriously delusional. And so I think we shouldn't try to do it. What we should try to do is give people a spiritual science. That's really all they, science is science. Like here in this country, New Zealand, or any other country, if there's a scientific breakthrough, it can be in medical research, it can be in transportation technology, whatever it may be, everyone accepts it. For example, here in New Zealand, it's sort of state of the art. Whatever is the latest and the best in all these different fields of applied technology, they want it here. And no one really cares where it came from. It's like when you get on a commercial jet, your main concern is not what country it was built in. Your main concern is that it was well built, it's safe, and you're going to, get to where you're going. And so in the same way, if we present a real spiritual science, it doesn't matter where it comes from. It's not about India, it's not about America, it's not about anything, it's just about spiritual science. So I think and so Lord Chaitanya says that, famously explains in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that we're all cultivating our devotional garden, so to speak, which is metaphor for the heart. And we plant the seed of devotion in the heart and we water it by hearing and chanting, it grows. And then sometimes weeds grow. When you water your garden, you're also watering the weeds. So there are not only individual weeds, there are collective weeds, there are community weeds, there are societal weeds. And there's kind of a jungle out there right now, in the sense that if you look at how much mythology and superstition has infiltrated what is supposed to be a spiritual science, like I was saying the other day, all this Harry Potter stuff, like if you sneeze on a Wednesday and you're facing north and you got to throw black pepper over your left shoulder or something. I mean, I'm just making that up, but I'm sure I could convince thousands of people in ISKCON to do it. So, the difference between magic and mysticism, which are two different categories, is that in mysticism, there is a coherent system. For example, talk about a soul and God, talk about soul and God, that's, you could say, mystical or metaphysical or spiritual, but it's coherent, it's philosophical, it's categorical. Whereas if you talk about magic, like, take a cat's tail and, do this with it or swing it around, there's no rhyme or reason. If you look, for example, at all the typical potions or incantations or, little things you chant or all this stuff in magic. And if you look at Western culture, there's a huge tradition of magic. That there's a whole history to it, how, from basically in ancient Greco-Roman times, or how it, actually with the Crusades, ironically enough, Christendom, the idea was in the dark ages that Europe was supposed to be the kingdom of Christ on earth. And they just kind of sealed it up. But ironically, with the Crusades, which were meant to conquer, the pagan lands, what it really did is the Crusaders brought back all these other cultural things, books and ideas and legends and magic and everything, and it really started to open up Europe. It's kind of an unfortunate way to do it, but if you look at magic, if you look at all the, there's a very powerful tradition of magic that runs throughout Western history and other parts of the world. It's not really rational. Like, you mix up this little spell for this thing and that, and it's not categorical, it's not systematic, it's just everything's kind of like one time only. And another important distinction between mysticism and magic is it doesn't really depend on any ethical component. It's kind of like a type of, I don't want to say pseudoscience or claims to be, like, for example, let's say you're building a car engine. It doesn't matter. Are you a good person? Are you a bad person? Do you hate people? Do you love people? It's irrelevant. If you build the engine right, your car will run. And so magic, which is a type of sort of alternative technology, or claims to be, has no ethical dimension, whereas mysticism does. So, for example, let's say you're chanting Hare Krishna, or you're trying to practice Bhakti Yoga, then your attitude, whether you're loving or envious or self-seeking or generous and giving, it makes all the difference in the world. So the efficacy of spiritual and mystical processes, the efficacy depends very strongly on moral issues like your virtue or your lack of virtue, whereas magic, there's no such thing. It doesn't matter. It's just an alternative technology. So when a spiritual movement just gets permeated by magic and all kinds of superstitions and mythologies and this and that, it becomes sort of unrecognizable as a spiritual science. So that's what I'm trying to do. I believe that the only Hare Krishna movement that the Western world will accept in large numbers is a Hare Krishna movement that's presenting spiritual science. Not Indian mythology, not superstition, not all kinds of rituals, but just a spiritual science. And another thing is that it's the first principle of social psychology that people feel comfortable with people who are like them. I mean, the exotic has its appeal, and that's why people go to shows to see, exotic cultures, or they may actually travel to other countries. And so, yes, the exotic, the foreign, it has its appeal, but ultimately people come home. Very few people, let's say, go to these exotic places and just stay there. There's always a few. You can always find expatriates everywhere. But 99.9% of the people who go to exotic lands come home and probably never go there again. So the idea of presenting ourselves in the Western world in a very exotic way, and with the idea that this is like a superior culture, like if you take a piece of cloth and fold it this way, it's spiritual, fold it the other way, it's material. This is not, it's not scientific. It's just kind of superstitious, and I mean, no one in their right mind would ever think that's a spiritual science. And so that's basically what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to convince as many devotees as I can to really understand and present Krishna consciousness as a non-sectarian, non-ethnic spiritual science.
So aside from clothes, what are some other ways that we may be alienating or sort of making people feel uncomfortable? Practical things aside from clothes that might be something to consider.
I think everything that can be understood as external culture. We can talk about architecture, musical styles, cuisine. Prabhupada, the ironic thing is, Prabhupada was trying to be, like in America, he was trying to be more American, even as his disciples were trying to be more Indian, like ships passing in the night, as they say. It's there's a very famous story when Prabhupada bought the first major ISKCON property, which was in Los Angeles, on Sikh Avenue. And the devotees wanted to Indianize it. And Prabhupada said no. He wanted it to be American. I think it was an old Methodist church. The devotees wanted to put on Indian. First of all, they wanted to rip out the pews and put the deities in the sanctuary. And Prabhupada said no. He insisted on putting the Radha Krishna deities in what in a church is called the social hall, attached to the sanctuary. And And he made a beautiful temple there, but it was a much smaller room. He wanted to keep the pews in the sanctuary because he wanted Western people that will come in with their shoes, sit in the pews. Prabhupada sometimes would even play the organ, had an organ there. And he wanted the signboard in front kept, like churches always have a little signboard, the name of the pastor perhaps and what that Sunday sermon's about. So of course Prabhupada's disciples, once he was gone, after a while they ripped out the pews, moved the deities. And so you have Prabhupada trying to be more American externally, and some of his misguided disciples trying to be more Indian. Even, Surabhi Swami, passed away many years ago, was Prabhupada's architect in India. He designed everything. Mayapur, first Mayapur buildings, the Juhu Hare Krishna land, the Radha Krishna Balaram temple, the guest house, that was all Surabhi Swami. He was an architect from Holland. And I saw an interview with him. Prabhupada memory, he said, Prabhupada told not to make it Indian architecture. He said it can have Indian, it should be sort of, what do they call synthesis? It could have Indian elements, but also it should have Western elements. So even in India, not to speak of the West, even in India, Prabhupada was trying to make things comfortable for Western people. And he put it in his pranam mantra, Paschatya Deshatarne. Prabhupada defines himself as the person who came to save the Western countries. And it's just a geopolitical reality. Unless our movement becomes much more powerful in the Western world, Prabhupada's global strategy fails. If we can just kind of, get out of the little bliss bubble for a second and talk about reality. ISKCON, I'm a member of ISKCON, but you look at the ISKCON 50 magazine, it's just this bliss bubble. It's like, hi, we're Hare Krishnas, and all of us are happy all the time. And we dance through the world, giving people healthy vegetarian food. And so, yeah, that's basically it.
So are there examples of, you've got your Krishna West.
Yeah, well, Devamma Swami has his law. Yep. There are many, we know, we already have overwhelming evidence, whether it's in New Zealand or Australia or Los Angeles or many other places in the world, that when you present things in a more Western way, it's easier for Western people to come. For example, in Los Angeles, they have this big opulent temple that has a very difficult time attracting a lot of Western people to come, but they have alternative programs, ISKCON programs, several miles away from the temple, and they fill up, they get tons of people to come.
I had another question, which is, someone gets inspired in Krishna consciousness by hearing you. I want to help to revive Prabhupada's original movement. So what advice would you have for someone that has an inspiration to do that?
Send me all your money. Even if you're putting your family at risk, or it doesn't matter, just kidding. Okay, so that's another point, is that just like a nice young couple here that are making music, you showed you other things, and you wrote a book, beautiful book. So Prabhupada, there's a famous quote from Prabhupada you probably heard in a letter to Karandar. He said that ISKCON is for training people to be independently thoughtful. And Prabhupada said that if one person does all the thinking, just tells everybody else what to do, that will ruin ISKCON. It will ruin ISKCON. And so I think to some extent the movement is suffering from a, how should I put it, sort of a leadership culture, where, I'm not saying in every case, I don't want to criticize, but in some cases, it's like, let's say if you accept a guru, you're kind of taught that you have to, for the rest of your life, you have to be a mental child and just sort of do what you're told, and, don't think too much, and the guru will do the thinking for you, or one of the guru's representatives will do the thinking for you, and if you think differently, then, you're out of luck. So, yeah, we're not, the purpose of ISKCON is not to keep devotees as mental children under their authorities, whether it's a heavy temple president or a guru or a GBC. I'm not an anarchist. I'm not proposing that everyone just run wild. Obviously we have to have rules, but when the way we opened up Latin America, when I went down there, Prabhupada sent me there, and we just opened up dozens of temples and made hundreds and thousands of devotees. And I was never looking for followers. I was looking for leaders. So if we have leaders that are looking for followers, we are up the Viraja River without a paddle, so to speak. We need leaders who are just looking for leaders, who are trying to promote other devotees and make everyone they can a leader. Because my experience, which is kind of, disheartening a little bit, but then I just take a vitamin B12 pill and I feel better. But is that, so many places I've gone around the world and I've told devotees that we have to do this, and they feel, yes, we have to do this. And then it's just like, tell me what to do. I need to paint by numbers. And I tell them, well, use your intelligence and create a program. And it's somehow or other, it's hard to find devotees, even if they're actually intelligent, good devotees. It's hard to find devotees that just want to use their intelligence and want to stand on their own 2 feet. Prabhupada just sent us to the far corners of the world. When Prabhupada understood, it's like, when you smell blood in the water. When Prabhupada understood that all around the world people are responding to this message, he sent devotees all over the world, young devotees. And they just landed in open centers, and they had faith in Prabhupada and Krishna, and they preached, and somehow they made it work. Nowadays, to get, you tell somebody, just go out and create a program, and it's like they go deer in the headlights, like, tell me what to do, like everything, tell me everything that I should do, and somehow something's been lost. When Prabhupada was here, he personally defended the right of devotees to be leaders, to go out, and I'm not saying that everywhere is bad leadership, but I'm certainly not advocating anarchy and just lawlessness. But at the same time, the leaders of ISKCON should be doing everything in their power to convince other devotees to be leaders, not to be followers. And so the idea that I want to build up my program, whereas if you become a leader, that diminishes my program. So you keep someone artificially under you, they leave anyway, and then you don't get another program. I know big temples in America that, where Prabhupada said that, okay, this should be a center for training up devotees to go out and open new temples. And they haven't trained up one person to go out and open another center, which Prabhupada wanted in 40 years. Because they just want to keep everyone there. People end up leaving anyway because, they want to breathe and they want to be adults. So I think there's somehow, and again, I'm making a broad criticism. It obviously doesn't apply everywhere. Obviously, it doesn't apply to everyone. But I think it's widespread enough, so it's worth saying this. We can't have a movement where, in the name of parampara, in the name of submission, that it's offensive to be an adult. You understand?
Yeah, I really understand.
And so it's just, I think that perhaps that's the biggest problem. ISKCON has amazing resources, so many really good devotees. Like you. Intelligent devotees, sincere devotees that really want to give their life to Krishna. And it's just, somehow there's the idea that it's offensive to be an adult. And it's somehow threatening if someone starts acting like they have their own intelligence or they have their own ideas. Whereas that's the greatest possible, for me, ever since I became a GBC 44 years ago. Is that 44 years ago? No. Holy cow. Yes, it was 44 years ago. Almost 45 years ago. If I saw someone was kind of like pushing the boundaries, not in a bad sense, but sort of independent-minded, I thought that's great. It's not a threat. It's not dangerous. It's not like we got to keep this person down. It's the opposite. Maybe this person has some natural leadership, and therefore, of course, they're kind of, they want space. So give them space. Let them open something. Something has been lost. If the truth is to be told, something really important, which was at the heart of ISKCON, has been lost. I remember when I was young, when I was your age, I was actually your age once. I remember that, devotees were definitely territorial back then. It's like, this is my zone, that's your zone, this is my temple. You can't do Sankirtan in, I don't know, in Cincinnati or whatever it is. But at the same time, we really had the spirit of being a movement. It was really like, let's open up the world, just open everything up. And it was the greatest honor. People were just like to go out. That was the idea, that you join the Hare Krishna movement, get a little training, and if you really understand it, if you're really a devotee, then your first year or two of the movement, you're just preparing yourself to go out and create your own program. And that was the mood of ISKCON. And people were going out. And everyone was kind of cheering on everyone else. And we had this real sense that we have to change the world. Now, sure, I've got my program. Other gurus have their programs. It's just, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe it's happening, I just can't see it. But it just doesn't feel like it did before. It's funny because back then, there was no digital technology. There was no internet. We actually used snail mail. Probably in your age, you may find. Okay. We actually would write things down on paper. Yeah. So anyway, but we were much better informed. And the funny thing is now, with this like super crazy level of communication, no, it's like the dark ages of communication. Because when I was a young devotee, everyone knew everything was going on around the world. Everyone was totally tuned in. Every time a temple opened up somewhere in the world, everyone knew about it. And I would travel around, say, the United States, and everywhere I went, every city, you go to the temple, and it would just be full of young men and women who are like me, who came from that country, and that's everything Prabhupada wanted. It's not like that now. Prabhupada used to always say, whether it was in South Pacific, in America, everywhere, he would point to all these young devotees and say, I did not import them from India. Prabhupada used to brag about the fact. It was his pride and joy that his temples were not just Indian congregations. It's not that he didn't want Indians to join the movement, but Prabhupada's greatest happiness was that it wasn't just Indians, it was actually local devotees in all the temples. That was his greatest happiness. So it's about, frankly, saving the Western Hare Krishna movement. Because if the Western Hare Krishna movement doesn't become powerful and relevant, Prabhupada's global strategy fails. His pranam mantra becomes just, it was a hope that didn't pan out. Yes.
What about someone could be in an awkward situation where they appreciate what you're saying, but it contradicts what their leaders or even their guru is encouraging them in? So they could either disregard, if they take up what you're saying, it might mean disregarding or even committing offences towards their current leaders.
Interesting question. I would say that if the leaders anywhere in the world, I'm not talking about, any particular country, but if you have a place where the leaders excessively want to control the lives of other people, excessively, and the people want to be adults, they want their God-given freedom, they want the freedom that Prabhupada gave them, then the question, it's certainly an awkward situation. I'm not sure it's offensive. I think we have to distinguish those two. And I get these stories. People write me from all around, like, where I live, somewhere in a Hare Krishna temple, they told me that if I don't channel my rounds before Mangalarti, I won't go back to Godhead. Or if I don't do this, I won't go back to God. There's like a list of thousands of things. If you don't do them, you won't go back to Godhead. So, I think we first of all have to separate two things. If, for example, I have many disciples here and there. And a lot of them love Krishna West, some of them don't. Some of them prefer the traditional approach. I would never use my position as a guru to coerce or pressure my disciples to join Krishna West, because I think it would be a misuse of my authority. The whole point of Krishna West is that we shouldn't claim that details are basic principles. So why should I do that? I mean, I'm convinced that a certain strategy is much better for growing the movement, but I think it would be a misuse of my authority if I use my position as a guru or a sannyasi to threaten or coerce or pressure devotees or even my disciples to adopt a certain style. And so we should never commit offenses. We should certainly never commit offenses. But to say I'm an adult, and Prabhupada says here that I should learn to think, be independently thoughtful, and I certainly respect the boundaries of ISKCON. I'm not going to do anything that jeopardizes or harms any other ISKCON project, but I want to do things my way, and so I'm just asking for some space. I want to do my program. Where's the offense? We can go down the list of 10 offenses against the holy name, and wanting to be an adult is not one of them. So I think that the fact that, if you have objectively been offensive in some way, or let's say I start my own project and I'm actually interfering with other projects, like I'm stealing devotees from their projects, or I'm just criticizing them all the time, or things which are really unethical. But just the fact that you want to be an adult, the fact that you want to create your own project, which Prabhupada wanted you to do, where's the offense? The fact that someone doesn't like it doesn't mean it's offensive. There must be some objective offense there.
Some people get very specific instructions or guidance from their guru about what city they should live in or certain things. The idea is if they don't follow those specific details that their guru's instructed them, it's an offense.
You see, the problem there, and this is a huge problem in ISKCON, is that the guru function has been mixed with the administrative function. And technically speaking, the spiritual master gives instructions like chant 16 rounds, follow the 4 principles, give me money. Just the basic, really pure spiritual things. Especially the last one. I personally, Prabhupada did this because to get the movement going, but I think long term, if we want to develop a functioning spiritual organization, I think it's very dangerous to use your authority as a guru to pressure people administratively. I think that's very dangerous. Very dangerous. And I think it's inappropriately mixing 2 different services. I think we can't imitate Prabhupada. If you look at the sociology of religion, in the initial stage, you have a charismatic leader, all the authorities in that person. But so, for example, there's an approach to management which I think has been a source of unlimited burnout and driving people away. And that is, a leader comes up with a grand vision of what he or she wants to do, and then has to sort of like beat everyone into some, peg or, hole or something inside the machine. Like, I want to carry out this project. I need people to do it. Therefore, you've got to just be bludgeoned into some, into the machine. So you fit some spot in the machine because I want to do this. As opposed to telling a devotee, who are you? What's your nature? What do you like to do? What's your dream? What's your vision? Or the guru, you tell someone that I really want to do this. I want to do this for Prabhupada. I'd really appreciate it if you help me. How can you help me with this? And then see what the person says. I don't think we should use our position as a guru to coerce people, to threaten them with all kinds of damnation. Literally threatening people with damnation if they don't if they act like adults. People have wives or husbands, they have children, they have their own dreams and visions. And, I try to persuade people to help me with Krishna West, but if their heart is set on something else, I respect that. And I think it's really dangerous to use the authority of a guru to threaten people, threaten them, you won't go back to God. I think that's insane. I think people are doing that are just really have no idea what they're doing, and they have no idea how much damage they're causing to other people's lives. If you threaten someone, you won't go, but you'll lose your salvation. Your relationship with God will be severed if you don't just sort of blindly do whatever I say. That is madness. That is abusive in my view. In fact, I'll go even further, and I think it's abusive in many cases. And so what I do with people, my followers, those incredibly lucky souls that give up all their rational faculties and just mindlessly surrender to me, what I do is I talk to people and find out, what's your dream? What do you want to do? Or I'll tell them, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Can you help me? And if they say, well, I have kids, I'm concerned about a school for my children, or I've always wanted to do this or that. You negotiate, you talk. It's a discussion between adults. And you try to find something where a devotee or a disciple will be happy and feel they're really fulfilling their own life. At the same time, sincere disciples, they want to help the guru, but they also want to be adults. And they also have their own needs, and they have their own propensities. And Krishna actually says in the Bhagavad Gita that even an enlightened person follows their own nature. So this idea that if you really are, surrendered, you sort of denature yourself, or you strip yourself of any propensities, is a complete perversion of the Bhagavad Gita. The idea that only unsurrendered souls want to serve according to their own natures is just, it's a perversion of what Krishna teaches. And so to use all this sacred authority to threaten people with damnation, and you won't be saved, and you won't go back to heaven unless you just sort of mindlessly obey me, I think that is like major abuse, in my view.
Does that actually still happen?
Yeah.
So for someone in that awkward situation, could they just respectfully make their own adult decisions without making any offences?
Yes. If you could help your guru, and helping your guru, it's within your power and doesn't mean totally contradicting your own nature. Just to finish this, Krishna says again and again and again, he says it repeatedly in the Bhagavad Gita, that your duty is born of your nature. So if you want a career, because when you talk, the Shastra says, Varnashama, Charavata, etc., that you cannot actually worship Vishnu properly unless you follow Varnashram. And the ashram means, you can't be, as Prabhupada used to joke, you can't be a bachelor daddy. That was Prabhupada's sort of joking term. So, but in terms of Varna, it means career. It means career. You need a career, especially if you have a family. You have to have a career. You can't be a bum. You have to have a career. You have to do something. And so, and the career is born of your nature. Krishna says it again and again in chapter 18 of the Gita, where he describes the four Varnas. In each case, he says their duty is born of their nature. And so to give someone an instruction against their nature is to commit violence against them. Because Krishna says twice in the Bhagavad Gita, paradharmo bhayavaha, that it is very dangerous not to perform the duty born of your nature. So if someone is, whether it's a woman saying, well, let's say a woman has certain abilities, but you're, this word, which I think is like, Mataji. Let's say, the point is, if a woman has certain abilities, or if a man, and they're enthusiastic, and that's just what they love to do, and someone tells them you can't do it because you're a woman, or you can't do this because I want you to do something else, by not allowing a devotee to serve according to their own nature, a so-called authority is putting that devotee in danger, according to Bhagavad Gita. In the name of, not only will they So all this nonsense, like you won't go back to Godhead if you don't give up your nature and do what I want, it's exactly the opposite. According to Bhagavad Gita, you won't go back to Godhead if you don't serve according to your nature. Because Krishna says twice, it's dangerous not to do your duty that's born of your nature. So it's a very deadly cocktail when you mix these two things, where you get someone who has all this super authority of a guru or a sannyasi or a leader or GVC. You have all this authority, and then you're a manager, so you just kind of use that spiritual authority just as an instrument of management. I think that's extremely dangerous. And it has ruined, God knows how many hundreds, if not thousands, of spiritual lives. God only knows how many hundreds or thousands of people have been driven away from this movement because some misguided manager tried to invoke spiritual authority just to, sort of twist people into a little management position because they needed a little part of the machine there.
And it's an ineffective strategy managerially anyway.
I think it's crippled this movement, among other things.
The idea goes around that if you can be a part of something big for the preaching, even if it's not your nature, if you do something surrendered and it has a big
Krishna
impact.
says that it is very dangerous not to serve according to your nature. I wish the leaders of this movement would read Bhagavad Gita. It would help.
Or at least understand it if they have read it.
Krishna says that even a Jnanavan in 7:19, Krishna says, Bahunam Janmanam Ante, after many births, one who has knowledge, an enlightened person, surrenders to me. That same word Jnanavan, like Bhagavan, one who has knowledge, Krishna says, Sadrashang, there's 333. Sadrashang cheshtate swasya prakritir jnanavanapi. Even an enlightened person acts according to their own nature. And Krishna says, as a universal rule, prakriting janti bhutani. Creatures follow their nature. Nigraha kinkarishati. What will repression do? So to tell somebody you should give up your nature for the sake of this or that is just to go against Bhagavad Gita. If you're building some project, find some place for a devotee where they can follow their nature. Don't try to force them out of their nature. And then to threaten them like, you won't go back to Godhead. I can't believe it. Somehow or other, this last few weeks, I get this huge collection of, things for which you won't go back to Godhead. It seems to be like there's just this endless list. It just is crazy, insane things. That if you do this, you won't go back to, and who the hell are these people to say that? You go or don't go, Krishna decides that. Not some little soul in some Hare Krishna temple somewhere. Krishna decides who goes back to Godhead. So, I think we really need not to mix those two powers. Threaten people. Imagine that. Threaten people to lose everything they care about in life, to go back to Krishna if you just don't let me manage you. And if you insist on being an adult, you'll lose your salvation. Anyway, I think I made myself clear.
Yeah.
As you can see, I feel somewhat strongly on this point.
Makes a lot of sense. Spiritual sense.
Yeah.
So, Maharaj, maybe just to wrap up like this podcast interview,
Yes.
if could you speak as if you're speaking directly to someone who's listening that wants to take some initiative? Like, what would you personally say to that person that feels a bit inspired to do something?
I would say try to establish friendship with devotees you trust. Good devotees who understand and support you. And then discuss with your friends, discuss with people you trust, and come up with a plan. Always, of course, in cooperation with other ISKCON projects. Come up with a plan, some way that you could make an outstanding contribution to this movement.
Awesome. Thank you, Maharaj. That's wonderful.
My pleasure.
Great inspiration for me, and I'm sure everyone else who's listening. Hare Krishna. Thanks for listening. To find out more, go to successfulvaishnavas.com.
Whatever little service that anyone can do for Krishna is to be appreciated and celebrated.
Just give this life to Krishna.
We know that they have much more potential than they're presently using.
I went to a place of relishing the activity and letting go of the result completely.
You just associate with pure devotees. Then you shall be able to cross over the ocean of Nisan.